Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today, I have an amazing guest joining me again, Maggie Van Camp. How are you?
Hi, Tracy. I'm great. Thank you for inviting me to join you today.
I am so excited to have you back. You are a wealth of information and a fantastic guest. You guys in the audience, you will have seen Maggie before. She's done a few episodes with us, I think, at this point, and we're going to have another great conversation today. If you didn't catch a prior episode, Maggie is founder and partner at Loft 32 and Farmers Bridge and CO at Red Crest Farms. Maggie, before we dive into our topic, something exciting that you're working on, do you want to tell our audience a little bit more about who you are, your journey, what you do, and what you are excited about these days?
Oh, thanks, Tracy. Yeah, I've had a really interesting career in agriculture, as well as farming. So we have a chicken farm, which we raise meat birds in, and we're going through succession there, with my son taking over. And my career was in agrijournalism mostly. So I worked for Grain News. I was senior editor there. I was a senior editor with Country Guide for years. So for the large portion of my career, I worked in there, and I wrote a lot about succession planning. Like, I wrote probably thousands of articles over the course of my career on it, and I was like seeing some trends sort of emerge, right? And I was like, oh, this is so important. In the meantime, we're doing it with our own family. We're going through succession planning with the previous generation, and I started learning more about it. I started doing little public speaking, and we luckily had a transition plan in place when my husband passed away, and it made all the difference in the world because it gave us some choices and a pathway through it, and probably is one of the reasons we're still farming today, to be honest. That was really helpful, and I have a relationship with my family, with my extended family. So I personally believe it's important to get a succession plan in place. I know it is, but also professionally, I've seen it time and again. And then about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I got offered a job with BDO, which is an accounting firm, and I was their national director of agriculture for 5 years. And one of my jobs was to teach accountants how to communicate. That was one of the things I did, Tracy. And so I got really interested in this idea of building communication structures and how to do that. And I also worked with the business development team around transition planning. So that kind of combination, I decided I was going to retire, and I started Farmers Bridge, which works in that area and tries to help Canadian farmers and farmers from around the world, actually, build out farm succession that will work for their family. So that's what I'm up to now.
So important. We share that mission to protect the family farm and the farm family harmony, right? That's my goal behind the show.
They're integrated.
Yeah.
The success of the farm requires the family to be in harmony and supporting. It requires it. It's a superpower behind it.
I love it. And I talk to so many people on the show, and I know everybody's background, but I tend to forget. I forget how long you have been writing about transition planning. I know you've been doing this for a long time, but I kind of focus on that BDO period when I met with you guys and did some episodes back then. So, wow, you've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, I've seen it go from where we didn't know anything about it. Yeah. We really didn't. We were all just diving into it. And, previously the generations took care of succession with death. Harsh, but true. And here's the checkbook, son. Like, no, people didn't live long enough to actually have a period of transition. So I've seen that really shift. At the same time, sort of the professionalism of farming shift, and The business part of farming becomes so important today. So this is just our latest challenge. We're going to get through this as an industry, but we need to act. We can't stop waiting and getting stuck and pretending nothing's going to happen, because without a good plan, man, it sets you up for failure.
I love it. I'm doing a lot of episodes on transition, as you know. We're going to be
Thank
talking
you.
about that. Yes. There's just so much, and I think people can just get paralyzed and also focus on the negative. And today, I want to talk about something neat that you are doing, a new project that you've launched, and it is just such a beautiful concept. So, farm family legacy videos. Do you want to share more
Correct.
about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So one of the things that happens with farm succession that I've witnessed is that the families that share the stories of how the farm got to where it is today, as a starting point with their families, were better able to create alignments, an aligned goal. They were better able to stick to the vision and mission of the family because they understood this core of where they came from. And they often wanted to not have the same problem with succession that they maybe had in previous generations. So this sense of honoring the family farm as an heirloom comes out. So this is a consistent thing. And I had the idea of, wow, we should capture these by video. I mean, we have the capability. And I also think, like, what would I pay for a video for my husband talking about our family farm? Like, I would pay millions, honestly. I should say that,
Yeah.
but it's invaluable to me. Like, it would just be wonderful to have. And so I've kind of had that in the back of my mind. And I met a woman who had recently retired from the Ministry of Agriculture here in Guelph. And she walked in and we started talking, and she had done video production. That was her job. And she had interviewed farmers for years. And she goes, I want to have a little side gig for retirement. And I said, we need to do this, Ingrid. So in Loft 32, we know good videographers. We know other people. We have these links within communication that we were able to put it together. So that's where the idea of farm family legacy videos came from this idea that we need to capture the memories and the importance of our family history on the farm to be able to plan for the future.
I love that. And you actually answered my next question. I love those entrepreneurial moments. Like, I'm an entrepreneur, born, bred, will be till the day I die. And I'm always coming up with ideas, right? So I always love that moment where it's like, I should do this. So I was going to ask you that. So that's kind of how it came about for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we took about 4 months to build it out and price it correctly and try to get the right people on board, because it's a team effort that does this. And it was really important that it's not a promotional video, that this is a farm family gift to future generations. And so we started like that. We brought in some expertise that knows that, most video stories should only be 5 to 7, maybe 8 minutes long, or people lose interest. So we had to build it out like that. And then we've been doing a few. So yeah, we launched in beginning of December, and actually we're on our third one right now. And it's been a lot of fun to do. And it's been the stories, Tracy, like, honestly, the stories are amazing from rural Canada. And it feels like we're capturing Canadian history at the same time.
Beautiful. Okay, let's go to some technical details, and then I want to come back about some stories and talk to you about something else. So, how does it work? Let's say somebody's listening, they're like, well, that's cool. Is it in person, online? Share some of those details. I'm curious.
Yeah, well, and thank you, because we were really conscious about this. We wanted to do it in a way that was accessible price point for some family farms, and also make available a higher end version, because those two farms, those two levels of wanting to spend on a project like this, they exist. So what can we do? So we set up two versions. the least expensive one. Let's talk about that one.
Yeah.
That is a remote online version. So the trick to making this work for us is to have it well interviewed. So to have very good, compassionate questions, and we have a videographer, producer that goes through and asks you questions even remotely as you go through. It really helps create a story versus a ramble,
Yeah.
right?
That
But
makes
it's very accessible, so anybody can sit in front of their computer like we're doing today, and there'll be someone off camera that is asking them questions, and they start telling the stories that really matter. And that's what I did a sample for my own family, and that's what I did. And it's under $2,000 to do it. And it's really accessible. It includes pictures, like up to 30 pictures. So you get like snippets of these family pictures throughout it. And they're all placed and put together. She produces an actual video with music. And well, first of all, we create a story arc that matches the stories of the family farm. Then you take the video and, create telling the stories from the mouths of the people who built the farm.
Yeah.
And then we put in these pictures, and it ends up being a wonderful, wonderful piece of history. Just it's done remotely. The other option is to send a camera crew in, which is pretty fantastic too. We've done a couple of
Yeah.
these, and they're really fun because we can use drone footage,
Oh, wow.
which has
Yeah.
really been a wonderful, especially in the fall, capturing so beautiful.
Beautiful farm, the barns, the house, the in-person. Yeah.
And it's so cool because it's juxtapied against what the farmyard picture looked like in 1900.
Mm.
In fact, one of the families had video from the early 1900s of the great grandfather feeding the chickens.
Wow.
I know, fabulous. Like, and it was over here, and everybody kind of forgot about it. So
Yeah.
putting it all together is really important, and we don't spend enough time doing that. So that's a lot more. If anybody's done any video production, they understand to have crew come in.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's more like it's about $10,000 to get that done.
That makes
Which,
sense.
but when you see the time that it takes and the skills, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When I know that world, and that
yeah,
makes sense, right? But you also, I mean, digital, this is great. You can't
oh,
compare. They're both beautiful in their own ways, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But if you see the difference, so on farmersbridge.ca, there's samples of two different kinds, so that you can actually see the difference and see what would work for your family, and just get an idea of how powerful this can be.
Nice. I want to share something with you, Maggie. I knew you were doing this for a little while. You told me actually after I think we chatted the last time on the show. And
Yeah.
then since then, let me share something with you if you don't mind. I interviewed an author of the book Land Rich, Cash Poor. Maggie, I think you would love it. If you read this book, it literally like just hit home. I teared up in my interview with him, and I'm going to tell you why right now. The book is the history of farming in America
Okay.
put against his family story. This guy was, I think, fourth generation Wisconsin farmer, and he's a writer. He works for journalism. So he took and told his family's story via written word and set it
Mhm.
against the backdrop of what was going on at all points in history. And his whole overview, I mean, the point of his story is to talk about why farming got the short end of the stick left behind and why it doesn't need to be that way. But when I read that book, the farm's pretty special to anybody in agriculture that cares about the farm and the history. And times like I know my grandparents went through hard times, my great grandparents, right? Like you could just imagine. But
Mhm.
reading his book, and I'm going to loop this to your videos right away. I sat there like at times just about in tears because his family story was all of our grandparents' story.
Oh,
Little changes,
yes.
right? And then you know what hit home? Oh, I rarely get teary in episodes. Maybe we need at times. Go with it. I'm holding them in because, and this goes to the beauty of what you're offering. And I didn't realize how quickly you can miss history until it's gone and it's
Oh,
too late. So I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, I would love to interview my grandparents. They're all gone. We have we
oh,
have a great aunt. We have neighbors that I could still interview, but all my grandparents are gone. Their stories are gone. And it
forever.
literally, I didn't realize how important that was until I
Mhm.
realized. And I think that's a byproduct of age. But then also reading that book, it almost just got me how much I missed out. You can't get that. So when I heard
Well,
about
okay,
what
I'm
you're
going to
doing,
say you do have an opportunity within your own parents because they
right?
remember those stories.
Yes.
They remember the one man talks about the trunk that his grandparents brought with everything they owned. You know, that one little wooden trunk.
Yeah.
And he played in it as a kid. Like he would jump in the trunk and it fit him just.
Wow.
And how powerful that story is. And if he's not there to tell it, who is going to be
Yeah.
able to tell it, right?
That's where
That's
I'm
where we
looping
lose.
around to
Yeah.
even when you mentioned this to me before, I'm like, that's really cool. But didn't
Mhm.
really quite hit me till reading that book. And then now seeing what you're offering, I'm like, oh my gosh, document what we can before
Mhm.
it's too late, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's more than just the farm. So the most recent one we did was with Peter Hannum, who's a, a crop farmer. He brought soybeans to Canada, basically.
Oh,
That
wow.
was his,
Yeah.
yeah, he's a seed grower, a phenomenal man, very influential. And so he got to talk about that within the context of their farm. And it's like, wow, we are capturing history. Like that is so significant.
Yeah.
So significant. And we can't really we'll lose that because Peter's, he might be in his 80s now. Without him telling those stories, it doesn't have the same impact. So it's it is an interesting thing, and it's more important than I think we understand because a couple things, Tracy. You're an outlaw, right? And your family as well.
I'm an
Um,
outlaw. They don't treat me that way, but I am. Yeah, I have great in-laws.
Yeah, exactly. But so our farm family meeting, we invited our outlaws. We invited my daughter-in-law that, has been dating my son for 8 years or something, 10 years. And we, brought in my partner now and we showed them this video. And so they could understand how important keeping the family farm going was to us.
Mm,
We knew it.
yeah.
We knew those stories, but they didn't necessarily know it. And then when it was done, we said, do you have any questions? It was like, yes, they had a whole bunch of questions about the history of the family farm and what it meant to us. And they didn't know I was a seventh generation farmer. Like they
Wow.
were like, what?
Yeah.
Seven generations? Like, is that possible? Yes, it is. You know, they started asking questions. So that was really, really powerful. It opened up that discussion in a way that hadn't been done. And the trick is to have a story, a video story that is powerful, that does open up for future. So, those questions that can be answered are like, what would previous generations of Van Camps think about your farm today?
Yeah.
What would that look like? Or, some of the questions that our producers ask can be like, what are you most proud of today? And that, we always think of when we give people a milestones document to fill out,
Okay.
really important to get their thoughts together before. And they're all about, okay, we put bin number 3 up in 1987. And we bought a no-till drill in in 2000, like all those kind of impactful things. But what comes out in those stories is actually a lot about the people. You know, my grandfather was hurt in an accident in 1956, and ever since then, he wore a helmet on his head. You know, like those kind of stories come out. And it's not just about I mean, it's easy to write down all the things that happened, right? But to talk about your family and how important that family is to the farm, not always the farm to the family, that's a really interesting thing that comes out because we are proud and we're proud of our kids.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine how important that is to them to
Yeah.
hear? Like Marnie McLean did one from Southern Manitoba. I don't know if you know Henry Seeds. She did one. She talked about her kids and how they were building their farm so that if they want to come back to the farm, they could, and how wonderful they were, and how, you know, what kind of um, skills they brought to the farm, even though the youngest, I think, is still 17 or, you know, still a teenager. But she was so proud of her kids integrated into that farm. So really great stories, great stories. It's not all past. It's also a little bit about what's the future? What would you like for your farm family?
I like it. It really ties the big vision together, right? I don't know
Yeah.
about you, Maggie. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm busy. I'm stuck in the zone. Today's the most important. Of course, you plan for the future. I think with this concept and this work and documenting the past, what
Mhm.
has also really hit home is previous generations have been here, right? Too. It's bigger than just you. Sometimes we get like the horse blinders, which are great because it keeps you focused. But I find knowing what they've gone through and survived, also, that's one thing
Oh,
I took away, right? It's like, oh, okay, we're going through problems as an industry and a farm, but wow, just documenting it context, right? And just, yeah.
mm-hmm.
So
Putting
many
everything in
thoughts to that.
context is really an important part of succession planning because it's a continuum. You're actually creating a continuum, and the continuum has a past. So just that understanding of how important the past is to build for the future is something that this does. Now, do you need to make a video of this? No, you can just verbally talk about it. That's what's happened in the past. Uh, but a video like this can last generations. Um, and it's a really powerful tool. I mean, some people are using little snippets from it to market their seed. You know, like it's a really important way to create awareness in the general public that you are a family farm, right?
Yeah.
And how important that is. It's just really interesting, that vision of what the future is going to look like. That's important for that outgoing generation to make sure that people understand their priorities.
I
It's,
love
it's
it.
a it's a reason they got to where they did,
Yeah.
right? So it's not saying that that's it. It's saying that this is where we are today.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful. I have so many things I want to say. We could talk about it for hours. Can I share one last story and then I want to get you to talk
Please
about it a
do.
little bit more. I remember when Anthony and I first started farming, we got our first cattle loan and my grandpa.
Whoa.
Yeah, my grandpa
Yeah.
was a Black Angus farmer in southern Manitoba. I was so
Okay.
proud to go tell my grandpa about
Yeah.
my cattle loan. I was a real farmer just like him, right? This was quite some time ago. I was pretty young, 20s, somewhere in there. And then I remember sitting down, and this is like these moments of documenting that I think about that could be included in here. But I remember sitting down and then telling him that. And he's like, oh, good. And then he told me the first cattle loan he tried to apply for back in the day, they didn't have a lot of money. Credit wasn't easy. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
think about these things, didn't know it. He got declined. So he had to figure out how to buy because there was no credit. Like it wasn't anything personal on him. Credit just
Yeah.
wasn't a big thing back then. So whatever the story was, he couldn't get a loan. So he then proceeded to tell me a little bit about that. I already forget half the details, but just beautiful things like that. And like you said, you can write things down, tell stories, but memory's good, but short, right? So having all that documented. Anyways,
And also the telephone effect, like someone will tell a story and then tell it again and then pass over here. And the truth sometimes gets morphed.
yes. Yeah.
So if you can document it. And the other part is getting the pictures together. So that's a fascinating
Mm,
thing as well, because, all of us have a shoebox of old photographs
yeah.
and then nobody ever does anything with them. But
Yeah.
this enables you to actually put a face to the farm and where it came from. So, that's an important part as well. We don't know what the future is going to hold, any of us. So maybe not forgetting that it came from people and people's dreams, like
Yeah.
that part, that idea that people came to Canada with one box and ended up building a big, beautiful farm, isn't.
Yeah.
And the most thing they were proud of is their three children and the education that they got. Like, it's like, that's the truth. And the father said this, not mom. Like, the
Mm,
father said that. So this gives you an opportunity to talk about how much the farm means to you, but also how much your family means to you. And I'm tearing up here because
I'm
I,
feeling
I
it too.
didn't think, and this woman who does the production, Ingrid, she is so good at it
Mm,
that she was doing, okay, I've told my story a lot. I've told it in front of large crowds, and I'm a fairly clear communicator, and I don't cry much, not in public. And she actually had me crying, Tracy. Like, I had no idea that I was going to choke up telling that story again. But it's important. It's really important to get clarity.
yeah. Well, and
Hmm.
those one day, unfortunately, we're all going to be gone. And then Tracy's story and Maggie's story is going to be lost, let alone the generations before, right? And those
Yeah.
are important things that shaped you and your kids and their kids because it automatically gets handed down. So you've done a few things. We've ebbed and flowed. I think two things you wanted to do was maybe share about some of the people you've shared throughout, if you want to add on that. You've touched on how important that is, connecting the past to the future in transition planning. You've touched on it a little bit. So to wrap up, if you want to share more about the ones you've done, what you're excited about, and then that transition planning, I'll leave this area for you
Okay.
to share more thoughts if you
So,
have any.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love to. Okay, so this is not a transition plan. This is not a succession plan. This is really about level setting everyone with their knowledge and opening it up to questions. So that's the part I wrote 3 or 4 discussion questions that people can use after, like, so they show it. Everyone's like, oh wow, that's amazing. But then let's ask some questions about it. Like, how one of the questions that we tend not to talk about in the videos, but we hope families will talk about it when they show it to each other, is succession planning gone wrong in the past.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's a really important story to keep and to talk about, but we don't want the farm family legacy to be about that.
Right.
We want that to be a conversation to have with your family and how important it is. I think it's not it has to be a positive thing. And I think
Right.
you got to where you are today for a reason, and those tend to be
Yeah.
positive things, and or at least how you reacted positively maybe to negative situations. Um,
Nice.
so that opens up a lot of really interesting conversations around farm succession.
Mm,
When you allow that, we ask if anyone has any questions. We ask, what is your vision for the future? And sometimes they talk about that in the video, but that's something that everybody at the table then can align with, what's important about our family farm. My kids, I suggest people do this, is think of 4 words to best describe your farm, Tracy. Like, off the top of your head, what 4 words would you use to describe your farm?
Do you want me to answer that?
Do you have four
I'd
words?
say growing, busy, peaceful. Ooh, those are two opposite
That's
words, it almost seems. Growing, busy, peaceful, and proud.
Hmm.
We've built up so much alongside Anthony's parents. We built our own farm separately, but obviously had the opportunity to get started with them. But we've done so much in such a short time. And you look around, just like any farmer, is just wow, right? And I guess you could, if I had kids, you'd call that legacy, right? Whatever words you want to put in there. But for me, it's like, wow, we built
But
this.
even if your farm ends up going through and say a non-family succession,
Yeah.
this is even more important, right? This is actually even more important because suddenly there's an understanding that that person has without the kind of random stories happening and the pictures shown at Christmas time. Like that's a
Yeah.
really important part. And most people want to honor that.
Yeah.
Especially if they're passionate about farming. That's a
Well,
really
everybody loves a story, right? We're storytellers and story consumers. Don't we want to know the story of our farm? I mean, exactly to what we're talking about here. Whether it's your farm or a property you buy, don't we look at that building and go, huh, wonder when they built that? Or this, that
Mhm.
rubble pile that was the original house? Don't we
Oh yeah.
want to know that story? It's all
Yeah,
stories.
they're all the stories. And just that alignment of goals, like with say your 4 words, if you were to ask your husband, I'm sure there's some commonalities. And so you can really start building out an aligned vision for your farm going forward that everybody in the family gets. Their input's important.
Yeah.
And, there's some commonalities in those stories, but start with the history, start with that kind of storytelling.
I love that. Actually, I could see I'm all about conversations as you are too. You're the communication gal. You really are, but I could see that actually being a powerful moment to plan but also naturally start a very powerful transition planning conversation that's
Oh,
not as structured and formal, right? It's like, here's a story. I remember being around family at different times where somebody opens up with an old memory and this just vulnerability and moment happens. Could that not happen for transition planning? Just such a natural
mhm.
conversation comes out of there versus let's sit down and we need to do that, but let's sit down and here's the agenda. Here's a moment to just naturally connect with those questions, like you said, after. How does that make you feel? Like that's powerful.
I, that's powerful. And also that it can be super emotional. And just one of the
Yeah.
reasons people stop doing it is because they're feeling so emotional about it and they don't have a way to voice that. But
Oh, yeah.
once you kind of let it out
Yeah.
and it's recorded, then it's time to move on. And I feel if people stop getting stuck in that sort of emotional beating up of themselves and
Yes.
just tell the stories and keep those stories and capture it in a professional way instead of doing rid of you
Yeah.
know
Yeah. Totally.
then it's like yes, I cried during my video, but the whole thing was beautiful and professionally done, and I was guided through it, so I didn't just it wasn't just all tears. It was actually storytelling that was emotional, and it was captured, and I can't help but understand, like it is like a trigger point for some people emotionally. So
Yeah.
this enables people to get those emotional stories out, capture it, and then move on to something more future based.
Beautiful. I'm a
Yeah.
fan. I'm such a
So,
fan. Ever since reading
so
that book, and then it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I think age, I wanted to say this, maybe if you want to comment on it, I think as you grow up, right, you get older and each decade of your life is this, and then hustling hard. And then I'm finding I'm in a reflection decade. And as you get older, right, you get common sense and wisdom, and then you start to care about the past a little bit more. Where I found, maybe this is just me, I was so busy when I was young, these conversations that this video type of thing would have documented and
mhm.
captured, I was too young and didn't think of that. Now,
Whoop.
right? Now I'm thinking,
Mhm.
these
Yeah.
videos that captures that. And there's
Yeah.
something to that age as well. Sorry, that's a bit of a ramble.
No, it's true. There's some truth to that. And instead of people worrying, so that's what happens with often with succession planning. People start worrying about it, right? You're worried that they're not going to be successful, or they're not going to be able to afford things, or we're not going to be able to figure out a plan. It's a lot of worry. So
Yeah.
this is a very much an action-based project to do something like this. Sorry, my AirPod's falling out. And so you can stop worrying and start doing. And I think that's a really important thing for succession planning, is to, because we get hung up. We get hung up in the worry instead of saying, okay, let's get this part done, and then we're going to move to the next part. And this is a great entry into it.
I love it. This is beautiful, Maggie. Thanks for doing this. On behalf of
Thank you.
all of us that wouldn't even think to be documenting this stuff and losing some of our previous history, thank you for bringing this to the market as an option for our families. It's such a
Well, we just started this project. We've been working with some farm families, but for Valentine's Day, we decided we're going to offer a 10% discount. And the folks listening to Impact Farming, if they want to just send me a personal email at maggie@loft32.ca, you send me an email, we'll give you 10% off these videos, either one. And we can get some more of them done and get some of these stories captured. I think it's really fun, and it's a great way to move ahead. It's something you want to do now when you can. Don't wait until you can't.
amen to that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that offer too. And I'll put your email, your contact information on our show page if people want to connect with you. Maggie, this is lovely. I'm such a fan of your work in transition planning, and then the farm family legacy video. Such a beautiful concept. Thank you. If you want to just do one last shout out, one goodbye, we'll wrap up, and I'll see you on the next episode, Maggie. So,
well, if people want to see an example, they can go right on our website. You go scroll down to the bottom, and actually I used personal pictures on the so on there's the Van Camp family, an old picture that we use for our video, and click through and you will see the two different kinds, and you'll see a sample of what they look like, and start thinking about your own family. And it's as easy as reaching out, and we guide you through this, so you don't have to do it on your own. And we put some accountability to it so that you get it done. And within a month, we can usually get a family's video recorded for them.
that's lovely. Well, Maggie, thank you so much. I always love talking to you. Love the idea. Like I said, if you guys in the audience are interested, go to Farm Marketer, Impact Farming Show, find the episode, bottom of the page, show notes. You'll find it all there. Maggie, thank you so much.
Thanks, Tracy. Always great to talk to you. And I just want to say to Canadian farmers, please keep going with this planning. Whether you're retiring from farming entirely, or you have a non-family successor taking, or you have a successor that you're working with, keep going. Keep the ball rolling, because if you don't, no one's going to. So keep the ball rolling ahead, and we can all work together to get this done. We can do this.
Yeah, I love it, Maggie. I almost want to go into a succession planning, another episode here. You're such a wealth of information, and hopefully you have some time to come back on the show. I'd love to do another transition planning, not putting you in the hot seat, but I'd love to have you back on the show. You have such a strong message for the industry. So thank you.
I would love to hear what your listeners think and what questions they have and what is stopping them from proceeding. Because I think we need I study this, and I feel we need to understand that better to better serve them. And I personally am trying to look at this in more of a segregated audience approach instead of doing a general farm succession is this. Let's look at each audience and how we can better serve each of those segregated areas, because every farm is different and every family is different. And this is part of that project. Okay, let's think about it like that. Let's capture that difference.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. No pressure. I'll see you on the next show, Maggie. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.